Dyslexia versus instruction. Instruction first, labels later. Why early phonics matters more than early diagnosis. I've never met a 1-year-old who isn't dyslexic. In other words, struggling early doesn't mean something is wrong. It usually means they haven't been taught yet. Phonics isn't a remedy. It's the foundation to being able to read. Yet for too long, explicit phonics instruction was only offered after a dyslexia diagnosis. That's backward. Every fluent English reader relies on phonics to decode written English. The answer isn't early labeling, it's early instruction. Hello, and welcome to another exciting episode on KZ Academy. I'm Misty, a credentialed teacher with over 20 years of experience in second language acquisition, mathematics, and elementary education. Through teaching, coaching, and tutoring, I've dedicated my career to helping students, parents, and educators understand the science behind how we learn. This episode is inspired by posts I have been making since 2018 in online forums, which helped lay the groundwork for what is now known as the science of reading. Many key ideas that Emily Hanford later presented as her research were already being discussed and shared by me in these forums before she brought them to a wider audience. It's gratifying to see that the techniques I've been refining for over 20 years are now being embraced across America. Her voice played a crucial role in raising awareness and bringing these ideas into the mainstream. In today's episode, we're digging into the popular ad, 1 in 5 people are dyslexic. You've probably heard it. It's a powerful claim. 1 in 5 people are dyslexic. I've seen it used in schools, on social media, even in legislative hearings. But it isn't based on any specific study or a consistent definition. While dyslexia is real and serious, labeling 1 in 5 people as dyslexic does more than oversimplify it. It confuses a genuine neurological difference with something that, in many cases, is just the result of poor instruction. Most people who struggle with reading probably aren't dyslexic. They're undertaught. Reading is not a natural skill. It must be taught. And when we do teach it well, far fewer people struggle. Instead of rushing to diagnose, we need to slow down and ask the real question. Was this person ever given proper instruction in learning to read? In May of 2019, I wrote, "How old is your child? Dyslexia stems from the way a child attacks words to decipher them. It is a learned skill that words go from left to right and sentences go from left to right. Many times, students with dyslexia have poor letter-to-sound correspondence. They are trying to read the word as a whole picture rather than from left to right, blending letters." Part 1. Where did 1 in 5 come from? The 1 in 5 statistic is everywhere, but it's not a precise number from a scientific study. It's more of a memorable marketing message that caught on. In reality, we don't actually know how many people are truly dyslexic. What we do know is that most students who struggle with reading were never taught properly. Reading isn't a natural skill. It must be taught. And when it's taught well, far fewer people struggle. Before jumping to label a child, we need to ask the harder question. Were they ever taught to read in a clear, systematic, and effective way? The definition of dyslexia quietly widened to include any struggling reader or speller. But that's not how science or effective teaching works. Dyslexia is not struggling with reading or spelling. It's a specific brain-based difficulty with phonological processing. How the brain maps letters to sounds to decode words for reading. How the brain maps sounds to letters to encode words for spelling. Part 2. Dyslexia is real, but so is poor instruction. Dyslexia is real. It's a lifelong condition that makes reading and spelling difficult for even smart, hardworking students. However, inadequate or ineffective reading instruction can produce similar patterns of difficulty. In some instances, poor instruction may not only mask true dyslexia, but also contribute to the symptoms that resemble it. For years, Many educators believe that children learn to read in different ways. Phonics was treated as optional, something reserved for students who were diagnosed with reading difficulties. But that belief is backwards. Every fluent reader uses phonics, whether they realize it or not. Phonics isn't remedial, it's foundational. You don't have to understand the rules to benefit from them, just like you don't have to understand the term or the science behind the word gravity to know when you drop something, it falls. Similarly, you don't need to name phonics rules to use them when reading. Even if you can't name the rules, fluent readers use them automatically, like gravity. Phonics works whether or not you're aware of the term or not. A person who reads English fluently is using letter sound knowledge every time they decode a word. For far too long, a dyslexia diagnosis became the justification for giving a person phonics instruction, but phonics should never have been locked behind a diagnosis. It's not a remedy, it's the foundation for learning to read. Every person needs it to read English. Every person benefits from it. We should be teaching it early, starting as young as age 2, and growing the knowledge slowly and deliberately. We must teach it clearly and methodically, building a strong foundation for every learner. That's how we give all children, all people, a real chance to succeed. Part 3. Reading and writing are not the same skill. In November of 2019, I wrote, "Learning to write is not fun. Actually, learning to do anything is not fun. That is a stage in the process in order to be able to do it. No one is suddenly able to write something like a 5-paragraph essay. Literacy and writing ability are opposite sides of the same coin. Just because you can read, it doesn't mean you can write. There's a lot more work that goes into writing than reading. For reading, the letters are in front of you, and you can guess at words through context. For writing, each letter needs to be learned and practiced. Then to write words takes more practice. Can your child write the lowercase alphabet? What about the uppercase one? If those are easily done, can your child phonetically sound out words and guess how to spell them phonetically? These skills come well before sentence writing. Build slowly. The reason 4th graders are able to write essays is that they are slowly taught how to write parts of an essay every year. In kindergarten, they start teaching a basic paragraph. In 1st grade, they do paragraphs on different topics. By 2nd grade, they do simple essays. Then, by 3rd grade, they start essay writing. Grade level does not determine where your child is in the process of learning to write. It's about time and practice. Meet your child at his level and build from there. This insight still holds true. Reading and writing are truly opposite sides of the same coin. Reading starts with letters. The learner recognizes the symbol, says the sound, then blends the sound with the other sounds to read a word. Writing flips the process. Writing begins with knowing the word that you want to write, then breaking the word into the sounds that make the word, and selecting the correct letter or letter combinations to spell the word. Both skills rely on phonics, but in distinct ways, and each needs its own explicit instruction. A person can read well, yet struggle to spell, or vice versa, without being dyslexic. This simply means they need to focus on the specific skill that they're lagging. We've actually gotten quite good at spelling, at least when it's taught intentionally. In the 2019 National Spelling Bee, 8 finalists exhausted the Bee's dictionary in the final round, resulting in an unprecedented 8-way tie. The longer and more complex a word is, the more likely it is to follow phonics patterns. These aren't random clusters of letters. They follow consistent rules and structures. That's why building strong phonics skills from the start is so crucial. As students encounter an ever-growing array of words, phonics gives them the tools to break the words down and make sense of them. This is not an innate talent. It's a teachable skill. When we explicitly and systematically teach both reading and writing using phonics, each in its own way, every learner gains the foundation they need to succeed. Part 4. Labels don't teach reading. Receiving a diagnosis can feel like a breakthrough. It puts a name to the struggle, but a diagnosis is not a solution. Knowing you're dyslexic doesn't teach you how to decode. Accommodations can support learning, but they don't replace instruction, and no app, test, or label can do the hard work of building a reader. Assistive technologies like text-to-speech tools and audiobooks can provide important access to information for students who struggle with reading. These tools allow individuals to listen to or watch content, making written material more accessible. But while they offer a valuable workaround, they don't teach the foundational skill of reading. They bypass the process of learning to read. They do not replace it. The only way to teach reading so that everyone has a chance to learn to read is through structured literacy, systematic, explicit phonics instruction that builds step by step, delivered by someone who understands how to help a learner develop the complex skill of reading. There's no shortcut, just patience, practice, and skilled teaching to help people learn. Part 5. Diagnosing too early can mislead. We've reached a point where 5-year-olds are being flagged as dyslexic before they've even had a real chance to learn to read. Screening can be helpful. It can identify students who might struggle and ensure that they don't fall through the cracks. But a screener is not a diagnosis. Please do not label a person with a lifelong condition without first giving the person quality instruction and seeing how they respond. A person who hasn't had enough practice linking letters to sounds is not automatically disabled. They may simply be inexperienced. Reading is a learned skill. It's not an innate talent. As I used to joke with parents, I've never met a 1-year-old who isn't dyslexic. In other words, struggling with reading in the early stages doesn't mean something is wrong. It often just means they haven't been taught yet. When phonics is introduced early and taught well, many of the so-called warning signs vanish. The real solution isn't early labeling, it's early instruction. Part 6. Prevention through instruction. There is more that unites us than separates us. We are all human, and human brains learn to read English the same way, by mapping sounds to letters and blending them into words. This process isn't reserved for a few. It's not a rare gift or a special talent. It's a skill that develops through instruction, practice, and time. While some children may pick it up more quickly than others, the path to reading is fundamentally the same for everyone. And when that path is clearly taught, step by step, most people can learn to read. By providing strong evidence-based instruction from the very start, we can prevent the majority of reading difficulties before they even begin. This is not merely an intervention for struggling readers. It is the foundation upon which all reading success is built. Part 7. We are human. Before we rush to identify disabilities, we must first recognize that we are all human, and humans are not born knowing how to read. Learning to read is a complex process that requires time, effort, and consistent practice. Many of the behaviors often labeled as signs of dyslexia are not necessarily signs of a disorder. Rather, they are typical indicators of someone in the process of learning. Social media is filled with ads listing symptoms of dyslexia in children. One that I recently came across was signs of dyslexia in 2nd and 3rd grade. The ad claimed a child may have dyslexia if they struggle with recognizing common words, struggle with sounding out unfamiliar words, or struggle with spelling correctly. It also mentions guessing at words, reading without expression, avoiding writing, and even forgetting words after doing well on a spelling test. But we need to pause and consider what these signs really reflect. Are they signs of a neurological disorder, or are they signs of a person who has not yet mastered a skill? Letter confusion, decoding struggles, inconsistent spelling, and lack of fluency are all common in the early stages of reading and spelling development. These do not necessarily mean something is wrong. They simply mean that a person is still learning. We must resist the urge to treat every difficulty as a diagnosis. Just as with learning to play an instrument or acquiring a new language, learning to read and write involves repetition, feedback, and gradual improvement over time. Few people master a skill on their first attempt, and that is both expected and acceptable. Mistakes should not be viewed as evidence of failure, but as a natural and necessary step in the learning process. When normal learning behaviors are mistaken for signs of a disorder, we do a disservice to both students and educators. We risk creating fear and confusion where there should be support and understanding. Instead, we should normalize practice, embrace productive struggle, and remind both children and adults that mastery is the result of effort, not a label. Part 8. The hard truth about progress. Addressing dyslexia or any reading challenge is not a quick fix. It demands sustained, targeted teaching over months and often years. Reteaching foundational skills that peers mastered long ago requires unwavering patience, precise planning, and ongoing review. Short-term accommodations like audiobooks or apps can help students access content, but they do not build the decoding and fluency skills needed for reading comprehension. Real progress comes only through consistent, systematic instruction and the willingness to do the hard work of learning. Lifelong learning through hard work with a positive attitude and integrity. Practical tips and resources. In upcoming episodes, we'll explore practical strategies for effective reading instruction. But if you're eager to get started now, check out my Learn to Read Teacher's Manuals, Volumes 1 and 2, and the Student Learn to Read and Write Journal. These resources offer a clear, systematic path for teaching letter recognition, phonics, and blending. It's like having your very own step-by-step guide for reading instruction. Dyslexia as an acronym. D. Decoding. Teach phonics explicitly to help people break words into sounds. Why? Your support. Consistent encouragement and advocacy make lasting difference. S. Strategies. Equip learners with the tools to tackle reading and writing challenges. L. Lasting effort. Recognize that success often requires time and perseverance. E. Extra time. Provide additional time for reading, writing, and processing. X. Explicit instruction. Clear, direct teaching, especially in phonics and spelling, is essential. I. Inspiration. Celebrate progress and reinforce the belief that they can learn to read. A. Access. Ensure every child receives high-quality reading instruction from the start. Now back to the conclusion. Every person deserves the chance to develop the foundational skills needed to read and write, and that foundation begins with phonics. Phonics equips learners with the tools to decode written language, spell accurately, and communicate with confidence. Dyslexia is real, but so is poor instruction. Before assigning a lifelong diagnosis, we must first ask a critical question. Has this person truly been taught how to read? With early support, effective instruction, and enough time to practice, the vast majority of people can become capable readers. The earlier we begin, the more likely they are to succeed. So please, don't hold back instruction until a child falls behind. Don't delay phonics until after a diagnosis. Teach it early. Teach it clearly. Teach it to everyone. Because when we build a strong foundation, we give every learner the chance to thrive. If you found this discussion helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. And as always, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep exploring the fascinating world of education. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next episode.